And just thanks for everyone for joining us. And I hope this goes well. Like I said, first time trying this, and I'm gonna turn things over to Bridget and Lou, and we'll let them take it away.
Oh, you're muted.
Can't hear you, Bridget.
Let's do Zoom applause for Bridget and Lou. Yay!
All right. So we planted 727. So just a few days ago. The field here behind the shop, for those of you that have been to our facility on Bradner Road in Lucky. And we did 40 pounds the acre of, this is a specialty mix that we picked for weed suppression and nitrogen. And coming about to this field was, it was supposed to be, it was planted last fall to black emmer, and then it didn't really come on very well, so we ripped it up and we're going to put it to oats, and then that didn't go very well, so we ended up taking the opportunity to put a multi-species cover crop on it, just to see basically, okay, is there a difference between these multi-species mixes, or, you know, to see the biology that we're going to get out of it in the soil. So this is new to us too, but obviously Lou has been doing his research on multi-species stuff, so mixes and especially cover crops. So we took the opportunity to see what comes about.
Pull up your list on how we pull up your
Which one?
list and drive, the one we made up for the field.
Oh,
Explain the breakdown a little bit better.
yeah. So we have, I just put together like a little spreadsheet. I can share it with you after the meeting. I wasn't very much prepared to share it for the meeting, but I was looking for the mix that we did ourselves, that we were picking the different varieties. I was looking, number one, at obviously what we were going to get from the different varieties that we were in species that we were getting, as far as like whether nitrogen or weed suppression, or you know, just putting grasses in. And then the second most important one was cost. So trying to figure out per pound, per species, how much is too much, how much is not enough, and what it was going to cost and the difference in between them. This one that I made is actually a 14 species mix. It consists of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of legumes in there. Some overwintering, obviously. And then some different grasses in there.
Hey,
And
Bridget, sorry to interrupt. Your volume just went way down. I don't know if there's something over the microphone, maybe.
shouldn't be. Can you hear me better now?
Is anyone else having trouble hearing? Okay, maybe it's just me. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I just want to make sure. And like I said, the actual price of per pound of all these is going to be a big factor in what we're going to get out of it, as far as what, you know, will we get a good nitrogen fix out of it? Will we have less thistle pressure in that field? Is it going to then help with, you know, how long will the microbiology sustain in the field with crop rotation? So there's a lot of different reasons for picking certain mixes and certain seeds that we put in this mix. Do you want to say anything about it?
Yeah, we were looking at this, and of course, we're also enrolled in the H2 Ohio up here. So it's, as we have more growers that are getting into putting on these cover crops, we're trying to make it as cost effective as possible. This one, as far as the number of species, was probably a little bit heavier than what you'd find a normal grower actually wanting to incorporate into theirs. But it's also a practice in seeing what actually overwinters, and then what it's going to look like in the spring. A good example, we had probably about 6 years ago now, we did a lot of the tillage radish, and what we found out that actually there was a pretty high percentage both on our farm and at Stickles, remember?
Mhm.
that actually where the seed did overwinter, and then in the spring it was the field was pretty populated with new growth of the tillage radish. So I think it really depends on both the soil structure and the overwintering, the what you're going to get from the environmental as far as the freezing, thawing, and also the amount of moisture that you get from either the snowpack or rain from the time you actually get it seeded to the time that spring rolls around to actually what survives that, or what would actually overwinter out of this mix. So that was the other rationale between having as many different species and types of the legume for grass, brassica in that mix. Just to give you some idea of what drove the decisions on it. So.
Had you worked with all these species before?
I have separately, but not in a mix such as this. So that's why it'll be interesting. With the sun hemp, that was one that if I was going to do that as maybe a 3 or 4, like say a 5 species mix, I would have gotten that in much earlier. I would have pegged like the middle of June for that. So I know it's relatively late for that, but there again, I think whether it's early or late, a lot of time is very subjective based on the weather. So, and we'll see as our falls here continue to be warmer and warmer. We're seeing a lot of these. We're seeing a lot more growth on late planted covers than we've normally seen in the past. So.
A question up here from Brian. What was your lime gypsum compost strategy ahead of the cover crop? Did you do anything to prepare?
Well, we did not, because this field actually had gotten compost on it. I look back on it, it got compost on it 4 years ago. So actually it went up for compost again. And we do compost, we add compost based on soil tests. So either it's if it's a new field or a new farm that we're taking over, that's usually up at the 24 ton, and that's a starting baseline for us. And so the first 4 years, it just gets that 24 ton once over the course of that 4 years. And then after that, depending on the soil test, we have either there's a maintenance level on it, and actually we have some fields that don't require any compost on them anymore at this point. That's just because of the crop rotation and the cover crops that have gone on there, where we're not seeing any additional gain by applying any more compost. So.
Julie is wanting to know the specific mix, if you can share, Bridget.
Yeah, I can. Let me see what it is. On my screen here. Okay, so do you want to know like how many pounds of each and all that good stuff? So we have Balanza clover, some Austrian winter peas, some buck. How many pounds? So the Balanza clover is 2 pounds per acre. The Austrian winter peas are 12 pounds per acre. We have buckwheat, and that's 5 pounds per acre. We also have cowpeas, And those are 12 pounds per acre. And medium red clover is 2 pounds per acre. And sorghum Sudan grass, 5 pounds per acre. And then sun hemp, we did 4 pounds per acre. We did the rapeseed is 1 pound per acre. And radish, just a cover radish is 1 pound per acre. And we even have flax, and that's 5 pounds per acre. And then we have Italian ryegrass, 5 pounds per acre. And then the oil seed, a radish is 2 pounds per acre. The purple top turnip is 2 pounds per acre. And then we have 5 pounds of millet per acre.
That's 14.
So may I ask, so you guys chose these species, right? This is not a commercial mixture.
Correct.
That's really cool.
How does this complicate like termination? Especially, which is important in an organic setting.
It is, but I think right now, and I don't see one that's going to, I was mostly worried about being heavy actually into the rye. And that was one of the things we actually had gone with the Italian annual ryegrass versus the cereal. Because I know that can affect there is a slight allelopath when the rye germinates that comes out, and I didn't want to have that affect anything else that was in the mix. So
What all do you expect to overwinter?
well, I expect the clover, the cowpeas, the winter peas. I do expect the Italian ryegrass. The radish, I think a fair percentage of that will overwinter. Not necessarily the sun hemp, which actually I know that won't. Neither will the millet. And
That would be
yeah,
it.
possibly, yeah, well, possibly the radish and the turnip. I think it just depends on the climate. Not necessarily that the plant itself would overwinter, but I think some of the seed that doesn't germinate, what we found out was that's what we'll see come up in the spring.
Julia wants to know what kind of millet.
Wasn't like a Japanese millet or anything. It's just a non-specific varieties. Does that answer it, or?
Yep.
Just nerding out on the mix over here, Bridget. That's all.
My head was spinning. I mean, it's not when you like go in like to depth on what each one of, what you're expecting each one of these to do, but you're wondering, okay, will they all get along, in other words, so it's like you're trying to figure out if you were doing more harm than good. But I think this is a good group to start anyway.
Can we kind of move the discussion in that direction? Like how can we get at that, answering that question? I'm wondering if maybe we can, I know Brian, you worked a little bit with field cameras. Is that the way to go here, and kind of get pictures and see what comes up and how it does, and what's getting crowded out and maybe not being able to compete? Ideas?
I guess if you want to comment from me on it, I think your turnip's going to overwinter more than you think they will. At least our experience the last couple of years here was turnips. Especially the small ones seem to overwinter, and then you have a population of them in the spring. 2 pounds seems like nothing but on turnips, but if they have nutrition and the radishes do, you're just going to shade out some of your clover. That's just, I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of seeds a pound in those too. So, in regards to cameras, I did that a couple years ago and really found it interesting just to put a trail cam out on a tripod and set it for whatever interval you want, half an hour, an hour. Set it so you get I mean, you could set it for 24 hours a day, but if you set it on a time frame, do a little bit before and after dusk, just so you capture some kind of really unique images that come up, right before and after dusk. Yeah, make sure you don't have it set on motion. The raccoons and everything else will trigger it, birds, all that kind of stuff. You'll get way more images than you want. So, but trail cam on a tripod is just a really cool thing to look at that. You see the snow events, that type of stuff that happened in the early spring. That it's just nice to see that, and the progression of each of the species coming up. So that's just my comment.
Yeah, that's good information. So a lot of the mixes that, as most of you know, we're Albert Lee seed dealers, and a lot of the mixes that they offer, specialty mixes, the radish and the turnip, I thought it was a lot too when I said, okay, 2 pounds of each, but that's about the extent that they're gonna go. But a lot of their mixes have radish and clover mixed in with it as well, and they've done well with it. So that's kind of, I was going against when I was looking at and choosing how many pounds of these I was going to go. I talked to a few different people there at Albert Lee, and a couple local guys that do some specialty mixes here, to make sure I wasn't going to be too thick on one or the other. So again, hopefully not, but you definitely wouldn't want to go over 2 pounds of each of those, which is why we did like 1 pound of the radish, 1 pound of the rape, and didn't go too more heavy on the clovers either, because then we wouldn't give the grasses a chance to get up out of there too. So hopefully, like I said, it's trial and error, but with this specialty mix, those were taken into consideration as far as being too heavy on those two.
Just personal experience on the clovers, I don't think they're gonna dominate. Outdo your grass, but that's just personal experience on that. I really like the Balanza clover. I think there's some opportunity there. Depends on how long you let it go next spring, but it can really make a mat.
Yeah.
If you want a mat.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that we've on some of our ground that's better and better overall health. We have to be careful with the clover on it, and especially we noticed even more this year that we used to frost seed clover. So we go back 20 years ago, frost seeding, and I don't think we've actually done any frost seeding for probably almost 15 years now. Just because on our, like I said, on some of our more productive ground, that clover picks it up and it goes. This year we harvested probably 125 acres of wheat, and it's a short wheat variety. And I would say overall, there's probably close to 60% of that where the clover was right up even with the heads of wheat. So makes it a challenge. But so pushing that being said, pushing that seeding date back for the clover, we have actually had some areas where we'll have a decent stand in the small grain, but still putting the clover on even up to the like the first week of April. And even then, and I'm talking in decent wheat, we had 80 bushel wheat where the clover was right up with the wheat, and that was seeded right at, well, around April 1st. So like I said, I think our weather patterns are definitely changing around here. We're warming up quicker in the spring and we're staying warmer longer into the fall. We're definitely seeing that. And I think you're seeing a reaction to a lot of the old standards as far as seeding practices, interseeding. We know we have to make an adjustment to that. So each year we try to make you think you're making the right adjustment. Sometimes you are, sometimes you aren't. But even like with rates on there, 10 pounds, our standard is medium red clover at 10 pounds to the acre, which is underseeded grains. And we've kind of kept to that in some areas, even like, well, a good example this spring when we were wet, which we've probably been wet for about the last 5 years. We've just been in this pattern where we get really wet springs, but this year, a lot of the red clover was easily above my knee when we went out to chop it to actually try to get corn planted into it. So the biomass was incredible that we got off of that. And actually we had some of them that were planted down at around 8 pounds to the acre. So, but I don't mind that. It's more challenging to work with, but I'm also utilizing that for as my green manures. So, and you can definitely tell, and I'm not worried about, even when I've noticed that when we're working ground, we also work shallow. So, we haven't done any deep tillage, and I mean anything deeper than 4 inches. We haven't done any of that in probably well over 10. And because I'm trying not to disrupt the aerobic from the anaerobic microbes that are in the soil. And we've seen actually a chisel plowed half of a field, which ran right around, I would say probably 8 inches. That's with the clover, versus running a high speed mixing disc about 3.5 inches into it. And the overall I would say that the stand that we had was much better in the lighter tilled soils. And also the yields were much better. Even if it does have a few clover plants, don't get clipped off by the root. If you walk out there and you see when the corn starts growing, ironically, the corn plant is much bigger where it's got the clover right beside it. And I would say probably sometimes double the size. So I'm really not worried about terminating all the clover. It doesn't really compete that hard with actually it's very complementary to the corn from what I've seen.
What's the field going into next spring, I guess?
I think it's going to depend on when we're able to terminate it. And then also that's a question, for the group too, is looking at that as far as I may even terminate half of it early and leave the other half go, just to see what we can gain from that point, or what we lose from that point, right? So
So we've got a suggestion on here to document germination and survival. It's from Greg Labarge. He's one of our crop consultants with Extension here at Ohio State. And he suggests flagging off a few areas and then kind of just using those to focus in and make observations on species. He suggests once or twice a month. You could look at percentage cover or measure the change over time. And I know some of our researchers have done that with photographs. So just take a photograph and then you have some time to analyze it a little bit. So we use kind of a little square sometimes and put it out in the field at random spots. That's another method I've heard of. And then you just kind of count everything that's in it and quantify what's there, and then scale that up to be representative of the whole field. So it's a couple ideas. Any others? I'm just trying to move the conversation along here a little.
No, I think I should also add that the other idea with planting the cover crops when we did was that it would it would more mimic the time of year when a grower would have their small grain off. And then they have to go into, with us, we've got clover underneath. We've always had, not to say we'll continue that route, but we've always had clover interseeded with the small grain. There's also another option, maybe if you don't get a chance to get the clover on. Or else if there's other field work that you want to do, a lot of guys might want to eliminate, try to get rid of more thistle by working the ground before going into an overwintering. So that's one of the things that we're trying to balance out, is what time of year does that work best for the grower to actually put these practices into use. So
Lou,
Oh, go ahead.
I know this is asking a lot of farmers, but I know you understand it. Is it within your management capacity to actually set up a small replicated experiment, say on the termination date, for example, where you could have strips, randomly assigned, maybe 3 reps at a bare minimum, where you could actually do, maybe work with Greg or somebody, to do some statistical comparisons.
yeah, we could do that based on the equipment that we use. And since when it was planted, he's got record of it through his GPS and the planning as well. We can go in and actually, that's a good idea, Deb, because that's something we could easily do. And it really wouldn't impede the normal functionality of farm.
That would be awesome, because then, you've got, the side-by-side comparisons can be very powerful, but if we're actually talking about, research, we need to start thinking about replication, and that gets, like I say, but if you guys can do it, that's fantastic.
Yeah, we also have a small 12-foot international seeder that's got small seed box on it as well. And we've used that in the past, like when we do our oats and tillage reddish. That's what we use for that. So it doesn't have to be. This one was actually put in with the 30-foot air drill. So, but it doesn't have to be that extensive. Years on that field work out to what? How many?
17 more board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your other cover crop mix in the other field, you should explain that one.
Yeah, so we have 2 specialty mixes as well, but they are mixes from Albert Lee Seed. The fields that we have, or the farms that we have these mixes on, neither of them are organic, both of them are transitioning. One of them was so dead there was barely any weeds even growing on it, like we didn't even have to run a chopper over it very much. And the other one we've been farming organically kind of around it, but so that field was just acquired, which is the Patchen farm. I think it's close to 20 acres, Patchy or Patchen. So with those 2 opportunities, we're seeing how well these multi-species go into formerly conventionally farmed ground. Pretty sure there was no cover crop on either of them while they were being farmed conventionally. And the one field was coming out of beans, which was Eric's. And then I don't know. Oh, both of them were? Okay, so both of them were coming out of beans. So for the mixes that I chose so here we're basically got a clean slate of both these fields and transitioning them into organic. But the mix that I did on the mix I did on the Patchen field is called a diverse mix, and it's cover crop 10 or CC10. And like I said, this is an Albert Lee mix. And the reason I use this mix is when I was speaking to a few of their people there at Albert Lee, I kind of told them what was happening and where you know, that we have to be careful of the mixes because we're farming organically around it. So I didn't want something to take off and start being troublesome or anything like that. But also to try to get it a jump start a little bit on that. So this mix here has some oats, some berseem clover. It says chickling vetch, but I told him to leave that out. And then annual ryegrass, sun hemp, buckwheat. There's even mung bean in there, some sorghum stand grass, rapeseed, and daikon radish. This one here we put on at 20 pounds, or I'm sorry, 40 pounds to the acre is what we planted that on. And did he use the same planter with that one? Yeah, he used the same planter with that one. So, and that's on half of that field, half of the patch and farm. So the diverse max is a little more expensive, not as expensive as the mix that we created ourselves as far as that recipe, but this one here is a little more expensive. So I thought, okay, let's see. So Albert Lee also offers another similar mix, but it's called Value Max, and that's the CC2 or cover crop mix 2. And on the Value Max, it's annual ryegrass, mammoth clover, and then radish and rape. The reason I chose the Value Max wasn't just because of price, but it was also, you only had to put, it has more clovers in it, so you only had to put 15 to 20 pounds per acre on that. So I want to see what the difference is putting the 40 pounds per acre and putting the 20 pounds per acre and being more clover heavy versus being more with the oats and the grasses and stuff on the other one. So I think it was an $18 per acre difference for the Value Max. So I just want to see the difference in the two mixes and what would work out better, since like I said, it's like a clean slate on that field, and what takes off and what doesn't, and being conventionally farmed.
So would you mostly be interested in the yield in the subsequent year on that as a measurement? Or are there some other things you would look at as success rates?
Well, personally, I just want to see what actually will grow out of these mixes and won't, since it was farmed so, you know, with chemicals and stuff so long. I just want to see what, because if I can know what can take off in those fields and do well, then we transition other fields, I'm not worried about, you know, herbicides or anything that would potentially be still in the soil that would kill anything that we're putting in. I mean, these are expensive. Cover crops are expensive. So I want to see what lives and what dies in these fields, because weeds were struggling living. So I want to get it healthy and I want to see which, we're going to obviously do soil sample or soil testing on these, and eventually try to do some like type of what's the testing for, like the microbiology in it, like the biome and you know, to see is there a difference between the two or the two mixes, and is there a difference, and if there is a difference, what is that difference? That it lived or died, or this one took off, this one didn't, or you you know, it didn't make much of a difference as far as the life in there. I mean, eventually yield, yeah, that's great and everything, but I mean, these fields they need rescued first, and then we'll worry about that. Neither one of them obviously have compost on it, because they were farmed. That's going to be in the make for this field, this patch and field that we split in two, and then the other one, Eric's field. So, I mean, we have big plans for these fields, but we don't know what we have. So,
Yeah, I think the other thing to point out too is that a lot of these, as far as organic, and a lot of the tests, I know that when Albert Lee is running these and they're coming up with these seed mixes, they have worked quite a bit, like with Aaron Silva on them, and what's working and what's not working, where they're seeing it. And since I have this group on the phone right now, it's probably a good one to ask. Has anyone run across good, reliable soil health testing as far as the microbiome is concerned? I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that sell product that want to test your soil and tell you that you need to put their product on to get but I mean, you can make a test say anything depending on who's running the test. So I don't know if anybody has good independent labs yet that have the capability of that testing and the accuracy of it. If you do, I'd love some information or links to it.
I can tell you what we use here in Steve Coleman's old lab. It's like a 3-prong test. We look at soil protein, soil respiration, which just basically measures overall biological activity. It doesn't get into the specifics of what's doing the breathing in the soil, but it does measure how much of that's going on, basically. And then he looks at a POC test, which measures active carbon. And that's basically the part of your organic carbon that is a little bit more plant available, that would, you know, your soil biome would be pulling nutrients out of. So I'm not a soil scientist, but in a nutshell, that's kind of the 3 tests that we're recommending. I know there's other ones out there. I think Bridget and I both saw it, Judith Fitzpatrick,
Yeah.
her name right? Yeah, and she's got this nice little portable kit that you can take that supposedly tells you, you know, what your fungus to microbe ratio is and all kinds of fancy things. It's nice, it's portable, it's affordable, but you know, it would be great to even compare that to some of the other testing that we're seeing offered, you know, more expensively and less available, and see how it compares to those tests that maybe, you know, farmers don't usually have access to. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Because I think one of the things right now is we're still, because as Bridget pointed out, this is an expensive venture into cover crops, and there's a few guys around the state here that actually have done quite a bit of their own work on their farms. You know, Nathan with what he's doing down there, and being price conscious of it, and one of the growers had picked out that right around, he figured he could budget up to $48 an acre towards cover crops. Now he's a conventional grower. So now the big question comes in is, once we start using cover crops in a situation where we have synthetic fertilizers, you know, how much are we mitigating the overall good that a cover crop is supposed to do? And everybody's heard the talks, you know, Christine Jones on through, and in their labs, they have seen it. But to what degree? We have one of the growers that we work with up here, and their farm is in transition right now. So the older family member is stepping down from running, and the younger one is coming in, but really wants to put cover crops into their mix, into their rotation. But outside of anecdotally, you know, a measurement what we're gaining by doing this. And I think that that's, Deb can definitely comment to that, but a lot of our work as organic growers, it's anecdotally proven, right? So not scientifically, but it's still trying to figure out what that metrics is that defines a healthy soil. Even though we're all striving for it, what is that? What are we using to measure that? Because or else we just keep chasing, this fictional unicorn that's out there of healthy soil. And I think we're getting, and the reason I brought in conventional growers into the mix, because I think what you're seeing, especially when you're seeing a change of generations in these farms, is that there's a good base of some solid growers out there that really want to do well as far as overall soil health is, but they don't, there's not a really good path, there's not a really good map on how to get there. Like I said, right now, most of that is outside of what's been done at the universities, and what have been done at some of these other private labs, if you will. It's usually based on how much of their product you're going to incorporate on your farm, right? So, and I think as we venture into this, we still have those same questions too, because I could come back with a crop, whatever crop I end up putting on that farm, and go, yeah, it did really well. And then 2 years from now, I might do something that I don't perpetuate, or I even lose some of the biology that I'm spending money on trying to create in the first place. So.
Brookside Lab also has a soil health analysis, or they've got like a battery of tests that they run. I can share my screen a little bit, and if anyone has comments on it or has used it or is familiar with it, I'd be curious. But they actually calculate a little soil health score for you and make suggestions. And you can kind of see what all they look at, so they look at nitrogen and various forms and other nutrients. And then I thought they also did a respiration test, but I don't see it on here. So that kind of surprises me.
I think they do, Cassie.
Yeah.
They're super friendly and they do tours. So if you want a closer look at Brookside Labs, be glad to give them a call. They're here local in Auglaize County.
Mm-hmm. And I see John shared a link to some other people that do some biological testing. We do have some microbiologists here at Ohio State that have worked with soil. And I was hoping maybe Shakti would join us from CSU, but I know they've got a big, they've got some kind of conference going on, so might be a little light on attendance with them, but I know he does that kind of analysis in his lab. And I've talked to Soledad Benitez here, who's done some of that kind of work in the past. So there's a couple options we could pursue. Other suggestions?
Cornell,
Greg?
can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Back in the day when I was active, Cornell was developing or had developed a practical lab that looked at some of the more biological parameters. Are they still doing that? I think that actually came out of Steve Coleman's research there before he came to Ohio State. Are they still active in terms of someplace farmers can send soil samples to?
I don't know if they're still doing that. I know when Steve came here from Cornell,
right?
He and I had spoke about that, and that was something that he had wanted to replicate at Ohio State, because he didn't know what the status was going forward with it out of Cornell anymore. Obviously, and I think when he was here, unfortunately, as we talk about Steve Coleman, it's like, yeah, talk about a big loss right there. But, you know, because he and I were actually, we wanted to do a lot of on-farm work here. And we were also working with Kearns at the time and a few other things. So it's, I think this step into cover crop, it would be great if there was somebody, and this is probably a Cassie question, but somebody from Ohio State that this is a passion of theirs, either via extension or, you know, to be, it will take a little bit of hand holding. And also, like Deb pointed out, to get some good accurate data on it. I think that's at the point, as was pointed out before, you know, every organic farmer is doing this to some extent, right?
Mhm.
So, but it's also, it's the follow through, it's the data collection, it's the, you know, it's the documentation that goes along with it. And that's where most growers, you know, are ourselves included, you don't have that chunk of time cut out to,
Right.
That's right. It does look like Cornell's still offering commercial tests. I'm just, if you can see in my screen. So it looks like soil pH, organic matter, phosphorus, potassium, micronutrients, wet aggregate stability, which is a physical characteristic, active carbon, total carbon, total nitrogen, hardness. So yeah, and this one penetrometer we could do in field. That just requires having a meter. So I mean, we could go through Cornell, but these are all tests that we could get other places. Brookside, we're working with the University of Missouri on another project I'm involved with, getting a lot of these tests done there. So that's, you know, the problem is, you know, a lot of these labs offer this stuff to researchers, but not farmers. And, you know, it's kind of a chicken and egg question. You know, if we can prove that this is a useful test for farmers in decision making, you know, maybe that'll change. But, you know, how much do we really want to share and push those tests if they're not available to everyone? So, I've also been working with Ryan Hayden on a couple projects, and I know he's got an interest in sustainable ag, and we may be able to get him a little more involved, but he does teach at ATI, so his time is a little limited, but he might be willing to consult a bit.
So I'm new to the group, but one of the things that I think the group could help with is to develop resources like this. I put something in the comment box. If it was a portable test kit, that would be much more functional for a farmer to use. But we really need to go back and look at the reliability and validity issues. And we need to figure out what exactly we need to measure to understand soil health. I've gone to a bunch of different seminars and conferences, so I know kind of a little bit, but it's messy. And so I would think that could be a recommendation and maybe a project that the group, I think measurement is a big issue for farmers to do any research. And so soil health is one of the things on my list of measurement that I think we need to be developing resources. If we're going to have organic farmers doing this, then this group could provide perhaps some of this sort of guidance on how to do it. Because I don't think the average farmer can sort through and pick the best method. And it also has to be cost effective, because, you know, some of this testing is really expensive. So, but maybe we can get a grant that will pay for that if we come up with the right resources. So that's my piece, is something I think is worth pursuing.
Thanks, Anne. I definitely agree. This is something we've actually talked about in our little group before, is just comparing some of those tests side by side on some things that are important. Like you said, you know, affordability, is it easy to do? Does it tell you something useful? Yeah, it's a good idea. Eric?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Been listening in off and on, just pulled into this soil health discussion. And earlier today, I got our e-field soil health results back from Jason Hartshoe, who I think was trying to maybe bridge or carry the torch from the Steve Coleman lab, maybe. And these were all sent to, I'm going to share my screen. I think I have capability to do that, but I'm going to share with the group if I may. I have no idea how much time we have, but the eFields Digital Ag team is trying to put together soil health reports for farmers who have participated in this. At this point in time, it's cost shared. It's been free. I think Ohio Soybean Council has sponsored well over 200 of them a year, so 200 fields, if you will, in a sample. You can see this farm that I have here, where it was an alfalfa field, a dairy farmer's alfalfa field, and I really like this POC chart. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor moving, but you know, POC on this field compared to a 100, like all, I'm not sure how many samples, I'm going to say 200 samples this year that have been run to date. So that's kind of cool. I also, and I think organic farmers, actually, I think Dave Shively's should have a data set coming from this project, if you will. A different one I have is this Stookie farm that had manure on it. And I have some fields that don't show this good of POC, don't show this high of a epoxy relative to the state average, but the lab that's being used is Brookside. So Jamie Hampton referenced Brookside down in Auglaize County, and so all of the Ohio State soil health tests connected to eFields are going to Brookside, coming back, getting kind of remassaged into this report, if you will, and they'll be included in somehow, I don't know this yet, in the eFields booklet. But yeah, I just got back, like, I don't know, 20 some reports of different samples I pulled similar to this. That's all I wanted to share. Another potential way, I mean, there is this is open to any production practice, no-till, conventional, organic, IP, whatever you want to say, vegetable guys, whatever. That's all.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I mean, honestly, some of the work Steve did before he left was to compile all these POC values so that we have something to compare your results to. So it's kind of nice that we have that, you know, whereas you may not have that with some of these other test kits. So that is nice.
I would also argue we need like on the back of this, we need a 1-page primer. This is what I would tell Jason is, so what does it mean?
What do these mean?
So what does it mean? Thanks for.
We just published a new fact sheet on what labs offer different tests. It's hot off the press. I don't even have a link to share, but it does explain a little bit about these different soil health tests. But it doesn't really get into a lot of the microbiology. So I will share that with the group. And if somebody else has something to say, I might even try to look for the link real quick. Other ideas on soil test or other metrics we should be looking at for this test, this
Well,
trial?
Cassie, looking at the time, I think we're probably just about ready to wrap up. But if you want to look for that link, I just want to say thank you so much to Bridget and Lou for sharing your experience and in great detail and your ideas, especially for those 2 new fields that are going to be in transition. I think that's going to be super interesting, and really appreciate everybody throwing in and brainstorming about how we could, you know, work together going forward on these types of projects and glean some data that could be useful to a broader group of folks. Oh, there's the link. Cassie, you are fast.
Just had to remember somebody I don't usually communicate and search with about this and search for them in my email box. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. I hope this was useful to Bridget. I hope this was useful to you and Lou, and we can kind of talk a bit more. I think the big thing for me coming out of this is, yeah, we need to do some work on chasing that unicorn of soil health. So, and getting some information out to people. and this might be a vehicle for that. So more to come, and I will share the meeting link and some notes, and after I talk to Julia a little bit.
I'll get you some notes.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, thanks everyone for joining us. If you have some follow-up comments or thoughts, feel free to share them, and we can kind of distribute those as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks again,
Bye.
Bridget.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks, Bridget.